A gang who was led by a drug importer known as Thor attempted to smuggle £140 million of cocaine to the UK from Sierra Leone. The huge stash of illicit Class A substances was hidden inside a shipment of flour which was transported from West Africa by boat before its seizure at the border. Members of the Merseyside-based organised crime group behind the plot were locked up today for a combined total of more than 75 years. They included a pensioner who was sentenced to decades behind bars on his 70th birthday. Liverpool Crown Court heard that the National Crime Agency launched Operation Lemon Like after 1.3 tonnes of coke worth around £36 million at wholesale level, but the street value of as much as £140 million was seized at the port of Felixstowe in Suffolk. The Class A drugs had been concealed within a shipment of 20 kilogram sacks of flour which had arrived from the Sierra Leonean capital of Freetown on June 2022 and was bound for industrial units in Wigan by a stop in Morocco. Martin Reed, the KC prosecuting, described Darren Schofield as a leading member of a Merseyside-based crime group responsible for the overall coordination of the importation, which was foiled when the huge consignment was intercepted by UK Border Force. The 45-year-old, who has no previous convictions, was nicknamed Thor by his fellow gang members, apparently owing to his long, flowing locks. Stephen Martland arranged for the rental of the premises where the drugs were to be delivered and was also involved in sourcing chemicals which would enable the illicit substances to be cut in order to boost profits. Paul Mockett set up a registered company, BH Supplies Limited, to facilitate the purchase of these adulterants. The investigation also led to Neil Maguire of Bootsville being identified as the user of the handle Holy Book on encrypted communication platforms EncroChat. He was involved in trading 8 kilos of coke via the network alongside contacts such as Mr. Gratitude, Cherry Vape, Frosty Mallet, GoodVibes.com and Stringfella, which was said to have been Schofield's accounts. Surveillance meanwhile showed that both the 45-year-old and Paul O'Shea were involved in several handovers of coke. Darren Jones of Kirkdale was found in possession of around a kilo of cutting agent when arrested alongside Schofield during the NCA operation, while Darren Wetton of Chorley confessed to having couriered quantities of cannabis to Coventry and Glasgow. The defence for Schofield told the court, "There are inevitably people who are unidentified in this importation. Mr. Schofield is a constant presence in the arrangements. Very often those who are the true organisers, the financiers, etc. often remain in the shadows. He was not in the shadows here. He is playing an active hands-on part. He may not be at the absolute pinnacle of this operation. He has made a tremendous error of judgment. He is going to receive an extremely big sentence as a result of this, and that lies heavily with him. His remorse is genuine. There is another side to Darren. I ask the court to accept that there's a positive side to his character. He has kids." Martin, meanwhile, appeared in court on the day he turned 17. His counsel said the defendant has no previous drug trafficking offences. He only has one old motoring offence. He is 70 years of age today. His health has not been good over the years. So I asked the court to consider the impact of a substantial prison sentence of a man of his age and health and the impact on his immediate family, who have lodged a very positive character testimonial on his behalf, which presents a more rounded and fuller picture of the defendant. Whilst in prison, he has engaged positively and become a role model. The defence of Mockett stated that his client had shown genuine remorse and regret and added, "Of course, Mr. Mockett was motivated by financial gain. While he may have not played a management function, clearly he played an operational function within this chain." Mockett is now age 50 and he hasn't really got a record. And if he has, it's primarily for driving offences of criminal damage, and there are 2 matters of possession of drugs from over 25 years ago. He knows full well that the 3 people he cares about the most, his family, are the people he's let down the most. This is his first time in custody. The defence for Wetton said he was asked by a friend to become involved in delivering cannabis. He did in making delivery of those cannabis, and then he was allowed to deliver it from his house, and he was involved for a short period under direction. He had no influence on those above him at all, and his advantage would have been funding his own habit. He goes, he's a qualified HGV licence holder and a fully qualified mechanic, and he's a very good man, but his marriage broke down. And, he asked the judge, there's a good prospect of rehabilitation for him, and he said, I ask your Honour to consider a short sentence as possible, and whether such a sentence could be suspended in his case given his involvement with the offending. The defence for both Jones and O'Shea said, well, O'Shea, he's clearly involved in a chain of delivery, but he's also exploited by others above him following the collapse of his partner's business. He's essentially a courier, he's a stockman. He was not a stakeholder in this operation. He's used and directed by others above in the chain. Because he's been hard working all his life since the age of 16, working 6 days a week as a mechanic, and he's a very skilled one. Because what a mess he has made, he's going to pay a price, but should not be too high a price, because he's not in the same league as the others who exploited him. And then with regards to Jones, he said he's doing everything he can in custody to restore himself. This is not an individual who will be troubling the courts again any more than Mr. O'Shea will. This is an individual who has been sucked into the vortex who does not know what place to be in. The defence for Maguire said he does have convictions, but is relatively lightly convicted, with some 5 convictions. 3 of those are very minor. He said, I know, Your Honour, you will take into account the impact that this has on his family, and there are a number of kids in the family, and his partner speaks very highly of him as a father. She talks about the charitable work he did prior to his arrest. There is another side of him, and he's remorseful. He's making the most, or at least trying to make the most of his time in prison. So Schofield admitted conspiracy to import coke and appearing via video link in HMP Manchester. He will jail for 20 years, reduced from 30 years for his guilty plea. Then you got Martland, who was convicted of the same offence. After trial, while Mockett pleaded guilty to the charge, appearing remotely from HMP Liverpool, HMP Preston. They were in prison for 21 and 13 and a half years, respectively. Maguire was handed an 11-year and 4 months. O'Shea pleaded guilty. He was handed 6 years. Jones, who appeared from Walton, he was sentenced to 3.5 years. And Wetton, he got 12 months imprisonment, suspended for 18 months. Judge Brian Cummings said nearly all of you had no previous convictions at all, or none which are relevant or recent. Likewise, all of you have presented personal mitigation in a number of cases and is supported by personal testimonies. So that take into account all of these matters to the greatest extent that I can. But it has to be said that there is a limit to the effect that can have in this kind of case, a case involving serious organised crime. The courts must have regard to the effect of drug trafficking on the wider population, and a great deal of criminal offences are directly or indirectly related to drug trafficking, whether the trafficking itself, violence, persons under the influence of drugs, or offences committed by addicts in order to fund their habits. All of that has a terrible consequence, wrecks lives and destroys families, and most of you all are capable men about whom much better things can be said. Many of you are family members with young kids who are going to be suffering from your absence. So there's another guy called Neil who was acquitted of conspiracy to supply coke and conspiracy in relation to 1.3 tonnes. So guys, there's a story coming out the streets of the UK. Once again, if you already haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel. Please give this video a little like if you can. And also please leave a comment below and I'll be responding back. But once again, just want to say big respect for the support that you've given, not only this year, but throughout the years. I do really appreciate it. Once again, big respect going out to each and every one of you. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.